To the Village of Bartlett Board Committee of the Whole meeting for February 20, 2018. I call this meeting to order and ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Trustee Kimmer?
Here.
Carbonaro, absent. DEYNE?
Yes.
Gabrenya?
Here.
Hopkins?
Here.
REINKE?
Here.
President Wallace.
Here. First item we have under our committee meeting this evening is under Building and Zoning, Chairman Hopkins.
Thank you, President Wallace. We have one item on our agenda tonight. It's the Victory Center amendments to Annexation Agreement and the PUD Ordinance. The petition has been filed by Bartlett SLF Associates LP and Bartlett ILF Associates LP to amend the Annexation Agreement, amend the PUD Ordinance 2004-115, and amend the restricted covenants. With that, Mr. Klonzinski, do you want to kind of give us a rundown of what this is about?
Thank you, Trustee Hopkins. I don't have any pictures because it's just amended language, but essentially Victory Center, represented by Jerry Phoenix and Steve Friedland, are here tonight. They have the two associations, the Independent Living and the Supportive Living Center, are seeking refinance for the whole Victory Center complex. And in that review of the financing, basically HUD is the agency that finances it through this Love Corporation. They saw the covenant that existed on the current annexation agreement, which is basically the age restriction for both entities, for the independent and supportive living. They were not satisfied with it. Basically, they need to amend those items, and it's in the annexation agreement, it's in the PUD ordinance, and it's the restrictive covenant language, which you have in front of you today. That is apparently satisfactory with HUD financing, but it is an amendment that needs to go through our process through amending the PUD, which is a public hearing, because it's a condition of that PUD, and also it's a condition of the annexation agreement, so it needs to go to annexation amendment, which will also be a public hearing. They're here in front of you today to possibly answer any questions you may have and explain the need for the amendment.
Thank you, Jim. Is there any questions from the committee?
Not this time.
Nope. Would you guys like to say anything?
We would. Again, my name is Steve Friedland. I'm an attorney with Applegate and Thorne Thompson, and thanks for hearing us and considering our request. It is an odd request because we don't want to change anything at this property. It was developed, as you know, a little over 10 years ago, and there is a 104-unit independent living facility and a 104-unit supportive living facility. Those are owned separately and financed separately. HUD has programs which are, frankly, provide for very reasonable refinancing of the existing loans on the property, and we would like to take advantage of those. But HUD also has regulations which require that any restrictions that are on the property, covenants or restrictions, have to be subordinate to the HUD financing. So HUD is willing to accept a situation where your zoning controls, and we have a PUD here which has senior housing as the required use, but your community does something which, and I'm a zoning lawyer, I do this throughout the area, you actually are very careful, and that's a good thing. You provide both in your annexation agreement, because this property was annexed in, that there was that age restriction. In your PUD, you have the age restriction, and in a restrictive covenant that you require that we record and file against the property 12 years or so ago, that same age restriction. We're comfortable leaving that on, but we are requesting that the restrictive covenant indicate that it is subordinate to the HUD financing, so that in the, I would like to say odd circumstance that HUD were ever to foreclose and take over the facility, that restrictive covenant wouldn't be effective against HUD, which might give you some concern, but we feel that your zoning, which would stay in place and would provide for senior housing as the only use on the site, would be sufficient. I know those are some things we'll be talking with Mr. Mraz about, but that's the gist of the request. So I hope I didn't confuse you too much, but again, the point is that HUD has very restrictive rules when it comes to, HUD likes to be in charge, and at the same time, we'd like to take advantage of their program.
Thank you. Thank you for being here tonight. Any other questions? With that, we'll send it to the Plan Commission to review it and amend the PUD and conduct a public hearing. Thank you.
Thanks for being here tonight.
That's all we have under Building and Zoning tonight.
Thank you, Chairman Hopkins. Next item we have this evening on our standing committee reports is under Finance and Golf Committee, Chairman DEYNE.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. The item we have is the request for proposals to provide broker/consultant services for the village health, dental, and life insurance programs. And going to ask Janelle if she'd be so kind to explain what's happening here to the board.
And consideration by the board. We want to make sure that we're covering all of the points, including everything in the RFP that you want us to address for consideration moving forward with this process.
Any questions at all? Okay, then where do we move this along to? We send these proposals out, right?
Well, I have one question.
Oh, go, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off.
But I have to get to it.
Oh,
There was something in here about you want the qualified bidder, or in the RFP process, to be able to purchase the same exact policy? That's one of your guys' requirements in this? Why would you guys make that one of the requirements, is basically my question. And I don't know what number it is here, but it was one of the requirements.
I did not see that.
I don't recall.
I did not see that. I would have,
I don't know either.
Okay, maybe, are you looking at Section 5, minimum qualifications, item C? Under that, where it says ability to act as broker in procuring insurance from the village's current providers?
Yes.
Okay, so that addresses, it doesn't, that's not what it states. It states that they have the ability to obtain quotes from those providers as well, in addition to others. So it's not solely those providers.
Why is it necessary to put that language in there?
I think because it's one of the minimum qualifications. We would like to see a full spectrum of providers, and so we wanted to include the current providers as well as, you know, other markets.
I see it as maybe an obstacle if there's other brokers out there that could possibly save us money, but with this provision, they're excluded from the process.
We can clarify that it's not exclusive.
Yeah.
Sure.
I just don't want it to be self-limiting, maybe is the word.
Right, because I think what we're looking for is the maximum amount of flexibility so that we can realize some savings here. Makes sense?
Sure.
It's extraordinarily detailed. I think it's probably one of the most detailed RFPs we've ever had. Well, in the last 5 years.
Any other?
Well, can we word that a little differently and still submit, request these proposals and meet the deadline of March 19th?
Absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely.
Good.
I wouldn't, we can clarify that, just for information. We can go out on the street with the RFP, clarify that point, and then have people submit proposals and bring then the proposals back to the board.
Okay.
Wouldn't require a separate vote on this RFP.
How are we going to advertise the RFP?
We're going to send it, we have a number of brokers that have requested that we send them the RFP, so we will send directly to them. We will also use, we'll put it on our website, but I believe we'll also use some of the more personnel-focused publications.
Yes.
Good. I would just say that this is a very well-thought-out plan. I know typically you, request for a plan, typically you get lower prices when you add more options, and I think we've done a really good job of that, where if you have a couple of HMOs, a couple of PPOs, some ASAs. So I think it's a really well-done request here.
Any other questions? Mr. President, that's all we have this evening.
All right. Thank you, Chairman DEYNE. Final item on our committee meeting this evening is under Public Works. Chairman REINKE.
Thank you, Mr. President. We have the Public Works Complex Lake Michigan Water Receiving Station and the storage tanks as a second site plan amendment and special use permits. And with that, I'll turn it over to Jim to kind of give us the lay of the land, so to speak.
Thank you, Trustee Rankin. This is actually the second site plan amendment for this property that's on Bittersweet Lane. The first one was done for salt storage and wetland mitigation, and in 1993. And if you look, and it's again a little light here, but in the area that is right here, this is our administration building, this is just off the side of the administration building. We hope to put we want to put our Lake Michigan water pumping station and storage facilities. We're asking for the site plan amendment is asking for 2 1.5 million gallon water storage tanks. And there's also the receiving station right here. And then there's also the metering facility, which is right here, which is DuPage County will be building that. We did a perspective, or the engineers did a perspective drawing. This berm is existing. They'll keep that up. They'll put some natural area landscaping there and kind of shield the tanks from the residents. And we did a resident survey in terms of the distances. They're generally 220 to 230 feet away from these homes. We did some outreach to the residents to these homes. A letter was sent out to them, as well as they will receive a public hearing notice. This is, as Dan will tell you, and he knows a lot more about it than, as an engineer, he can deal with all the pumping and everything, but as an engineer, he can't deal with site plan amendments. But we do have to go through it because of the way the ordinance is structured. It's here in front of you prior to moving on to the Plan Commission for a public hearing. And Dan, if you want to add anything else, you can. The great detail is in the buildings.
So when we were talking about the cost of switching to Lake Michigan water, did you contemplate that we'd put these tanks at this location?
They actually factored in purchasing land, but when we started looking at where things were at, timing of where we're at right now, this made the most sense as far as public, it's land we already own. We don't have to talk to anyone, and purchase land and go through that process, so, and it fit right on the site, so it made sense.
What about the possibility of cross-contamination, right? So we've got these tanks with the fresh water in relative close proximity to the sewage treatment plant. How are you going to handle that to keep everything clean?
No worries. This is all upstream. So, and everything is protected to avoid something like that from happening anyway, but it is upstream, so there's no fear of that happening.
And how long do you anticipate it would take to build the tanks?
Right now, we are scheduled to go out to bid this spring. We're working on the IEPA loans. With that, we won't be able to award until July, because that's when their fiscal year starts and when they would be able to award that money to us. So we're looking at construction happening probably starting in August with substantial completion, meaning we can pump Lake Michigan water to our residents in May of next year, so May of 2019.
In terms of the community outreach, how has the response been? It sounds like it's probably early in the process, but what have the neighbors been saying?
We haven't heard a word.
Okay.
So we hand-delivered this same exhibit to all of them with a letter saying that a public hearing's gonna be coming. We invited them to stop in or give us a call if they had any questions, and we haven't heard anything yet. But we do encourage them to come and visit with us so we can show them everything, and it's all about Lake Michigan water at this point, which is a good thing.
And then one last question, and I don't mean to sound flippant at all, but I know we're going to get this question. What color are we going to paint the tanks?
Actually, we have two of the exact same tanks down on the wastewater side. They are navy blue glass-lined tanks. You might see the tanks Aqua Store, which is over, if you take 88 down by DeKalb. Their plant is right, we actually toured the plant. That's what we're anticipating on building here. It's a glass line, so you don't have to paint it, which I really liked. But that's, and you can get it in other colors. Their standard is the navy blue, and we were gonna go with the navy blue unless you guys would like to pick some other color. You can come down and look, if you want to see what it looks like. Ours will be much bigger with these tanks, but they're down at our wastewater treatment plant. Those tanks actually, long-term, will actually be removed. So.
Very good.
So will there be a cost savings if we don't have to purchase land, as you mentioned before?
Definitely.
And then is this to build two 1.5 million gallon storage tanks? Is this one of the most economical ways to doing it?
Yes.
We hold you to that date, Dan, May of next year.
I got everything writing on it right now, so I'm pushing it.
So my birthday, May 17th, I better flip on, you'll see my,
We're going for it.
you'll see my water softener on the curb, May, the first pickup for garbage in May. Scott, you gotta start working on that.
What type of a covering does it? It looks like a geodesic.
Yeah, it's got like aluminum type dome structure that's on top. It's more just to cover everything to avoid anything from getting into the tank.
So that's durable, that's going to last, that's not going to decay or
Yeah, we have, I mean, the tanks,
oxidize or rust or anything like that?
oh, the tanks that have been down at the wastewater treatment plant, we haven't had any issues with, and that's dealing with wastewater going through it, so.
And beyond the construction time, will there be any additional noise, traffic, maintenance to those buildings that would be notable to the residents and dissatisfactory to them?
Once everything is done, there should really be no noise. It'll all be contained within the building. We have a generator that'll be on, a backup generator, so when that's running, you might get a hum off of that, but that's gonna be inside as well, so it should be very, very low-key. It's not occupied, you know, our guys will check in, make sure everything's functioning, but we don't have any full-time employee there or anything like that.
parking lot? Or
Well, just years ago when we had this site plan, at one point they were looking at a garage. We don't anticipate needing that at this point, so that's why we saw that the land was available, and it made sense since the 30-inch water main coming from Roselle is going to be down Stearns as like ideal location to be able to just run down Bittersweet.
Some of the guys I heard said they were going to put a bowling alley there earlier.
That's news to me.
News on the starting of the groundbreaking. I think we have something coming up, right?
Yes.
Give us a little heads up while we're all in session here.
We are trying to confirm it with DuPage Water Commission, but right now the tentative date is the day of our actual special budget meeting, March 14th. We're looking at doing it at 4 o'clock. And I believe we'll have everything wrapped up and be able to get back to Village Hall. It'll be down at Public Works where the old where the actual metering station will end up going. And then we'll be able to come back here for the budget meeting.
What kind of activity they have on the other end right now?
Right now, they've ordered the pipe and all that stuff. That has a long lead time, so that's kind of what they're waiting for right now. March is a big month. Hopefully these rains and the weather cooperate, but they plan on starting in March with the transmission main. They're probably going to have multiple crews going. They have a deadline to get done with Roselle by July because they have a road project right behind it. So we have to get the water main done by July in Roselle. And then they also want to try to get in the sod farm area before now the rains are high, so they won't be able to get there. But if things dry out, they were hoping to be able to get in there and get that stretch done. So they'll probably have at least a couple crews going for that. And then hopefully all of our stuff with the EPA loan moves forward and this moves forward, then we would start all of our stuff in August. And then it's going to be very active, along with all the IDOT construction that'll be starting up in March.
We've got to keep a close eye on that. They use a lot of water at that sod farm, and we don't want them tapping our well.
Yeah, definitely.
Anything else?
I guess that's all for Public Works.
Thank you, Chairman Reinke, and that is all we have this evening for our committee meeting. With that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved by trustee DEYNE, seconded by trustee Hopkins. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Trustee Kammer?
Yes.
DEYNE?
Yes.
Gabrenya? Yes. Hopkins? Yes. REINKE?
Yes.
We are adjourned.